Hello, and welcome to Wilson v. Wilson, the podcast where we talk about politics, pop culture, and news. My name's Jess Wilson. I'm a junior here at Eastern Kentucky University with a double major in political science and broadcasting, and I also happen to serve as the assistant news editor for the Eastern Progress. I'm joined by...
I'm Peter Wilson. I'm a senior here. I'm majoring in broadcasting electronic media with a concentration in multimedia journalism. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Eastern Progress.
So we'll talk a little bit about where we stand politics-wise. That's kind of the point of the show. I'll lay it out. I'm a queer pagan leftist who grew up in Columbus, the Columbus area, going to public school with 2,000 other students. My parents are divorced. I've got one brother, and I have a sister, and I have a stepbrother as well. And I moved down here because I did not want to be in Ohio anymore. Peter?
I'm Peter. We already said that. I'm a Christian. I have 6 siblings. I grew up just north of here in Georgetown. I'm pretty conservative on lots of things. I would also consider myself pretty libertarian on some things. So sometimes my conservative personal beliefs won't always affect my politics, though they definitely do in some ways.
Yeah.
Good for introduction.
So let's talk about a couple of little quick issues we can talk about. It's climate change, climate bills, everything climate. What's your take?
I mean, I think that America, for a long time, has done a pretty bad job of paying attention to what they're using up. I think that some of that comes from, my family, weirdly enough, for being extremely conservative, you think, has been pretty environmentally, thoughtful for a while. I've got, my grandmother just loved conservation and stuff. She had woods, and she would be careful not to clear cut them, and she'd be careful how she used them. It's just, so we've always loved nature, so it's always from that you've got to be you got to take care of it. You've got to be careful not to pollute. I do sometimes wonder where, how much of that you can regulate safely, or in a way that's not interfering with other things. But I certainly think reining in how much we're using gas, how much we're using all coal, certainly. The things that coal has done to Eastern Kentucky are just not a good thing. It's in many ways devastated the region. And yes, it provided jobs, but for one, it doesn't provide jobs anymore. And for two, I mean, how many jobs is worth tearing down a mountain, which is what literally happens sometimes.
Yeah, I won't lie. I see a lot of the Friends of Coal or Coal Keeps the Lights On license plates when I'm driving around, especially southern Ohio, Kentucky. It just makes me sad because I know the people driving those cars are probably people who had family working in coal or who worked in coal and relied on that industry for income. And now there's not enough coal to keep it going, and coal's bad for the environment anyways. And I just feel sad because there's not a lot of options, you know?
Yeah, and I look at it and I say, I completely understand the let's keep coal going because people desperately need jobs. But I think it's kind of comes down to being, you've got to be willing to change sometimes. You got to be willing to move on from something. And having been to Eastern Kentucky, there are other things there that you could not exploit, but use in a business-like manner. I mean, tourism for one, and Eastern Kentucky is getting better at that. And they still have a long way to go, but that more tourists are going there, which I think is a good way to look at this gorgeous stuff we have. I guess that's one way it applies to local, but more globally, I mean, I tend to think that a lot of the climate-related regulations are a little misguided. They're a little slightly off. Take, for example, a lot of the things we've done with reusable bags instead of plastic. You can look at that and say, oh, great, we're not using these single-use bags. Everything has an environmental cost. And most of the single-use plastic bags are not ending up in the ocean from this country because you're going to throw it away,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to end up in a landfill, which isn't great, but it's a whole lot better than it floating in the ocean.
Yeah.
I don't know that I don't know where exactly I was going with that, but I do tend to think it has to come down to responsibility on a company and personal level, but part of that has to be encouragement from perhaps the government, especially I would say locally and at a state level, because that a state is more connected with what its state needs to change than, say, Washington, D.C. is all the time. Anyway.
Yeah, I think a large part of the issue is, I'd say, like the corporations' involvement. Like a lot of the pollution that we see that's causing issues with temperatures rising and climate change is coming on the corporate level. So I think that there needs to be stricter regulations on business owners, on large corporations like that, about how much pollution they can produce. I know there's some sort of stuff with the EPA, but it's more of a you receive a fine if you go over it. I don't think a fine is strict enough, because when you reach a certain level of wealth, like, what's a fine? They're only punishments towards people who struggle to afford to pay them. But I don't know, I think there needs to be bigger investment in renewable energy across probably every sector. Like, here's something, can't remember where I was reading it, but someone wrote an opinion article about why they think that cars, like electric cars, should have solar panels on top. And you hear a lot of people talking about, well, there's not enough energy coming from a solar panel on top of a car. There's not enough space to produce enough energy to run the car. But if you park outside, like if you leave your car outside for a few days, maybe you can generate enough energy to get you to the next place. And sure, you still need to like plug it in and stuff, and that energy comes from other places. But I think there's a way to integrate reusable energy into things that can't wholly be powered by them, I just think we need to be using reusable energy in every possible way.
I think that one's hard to argue with certainly from most standpoints, certainly even from an individualist perspective. I'd much rather have the ability for my own home to power itself.
Yeah.
Than to be reliant on an energy company or a coal company or whatever to power my home. So I think that's one of those things where I'm unsure why, and it has to do with lobbying and probably some corporate propaganda, why some people are still, now to be fair, there's pros and cons to every form of energy, but why it's become such a political issue, because it really feels like it shouldn't be. It's an energy generation issue. It's like you can stick a solar panel on your home and it'll power your home just sitting there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, if a hailstorm comes along and ruins that solar panel, that's tough. But there's, presumably, as you go into that, it's like, when I see, I can get energy from the sun, I don't immediately think, but what if a storm wrecks it? It's like, maybe you can get a cover for it for when storms come. I don't know. You can go there and it's not going to be perfect right away. Like we've had these non-renewable energy sources for a long time, and they have their kinks and stuff that took working out to be able to be used in an effective way. I think it's only fair to give renewable the same sort of fair shake, in a sense.
Yeah. And I think part of the issue too is, like, specifically with solar panels, really, it's cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So people who could really benefit from having a reusable energy source, I think are often people on the lower rungs who are like more poor, who don't have access to the resources to participate in personal use of renewable energy. So personally, I would say I think there should be more programs to subsidize or assist with people, especially lower income people, accessing personal use of reusable energy sources like solar panels, and that sort of thing.
And that's probably built some of the, I think, kind of anti-elitist stigma against solar panels.
Yeah.
Because when only rich people can afford it, only rich people have it, and then when the rich people are like, you should be driving a Tesla, like, that pisses me off because I bought my car for $3,000 because I could afford it.
Yeah.
It's like it's not, and you couldn't get a Tesla battery for $3,000. Like it's like you look at it and you say, well, yeah, there's a reason people aren't adopting them is because that's literally impossible. Like that, no, most people cannot afford a 60. Now, fortunately, again, it takes some time for things to get adopted. There's more and more electric cars coming out. I think I see solar panels more than I have. Like, certainly on a large scale. I know out by Winchester, there's a large solar panel farm that's been there in the last 10 years. So I think that's kind of the essential part is like, just like give it a try.
Yeah.
And I think that'll probably happen.
Yeah, I think you kind of got into something that's a larger issue, and it's that so much of like being sustainable, having access to fresh like produce and stuff, it's that it's cost prohibitive. Like you can have a box of like microwave meals. You could get like a couple of those for $20-30, but it's going to cost a lot more to get the resources to prepare your own food or to grow your own food or to eat sustainably or to get stuff. So you get the microwave meals and you are creating a lot more trash, a lot more waste than you would be if you grew your own food to use in your meals. That also takes time and energy and money that a lot of people don't have access to.
Yeah, that can be fair, and I think part of it is it can be hard work to be. I mean, even like take food. It's hard to prepare your own food. It's hard to get it fresh, and I mean it's not as hard as it used to be, right? You can go to a store and buy it. Like that's easier than owning a farm, but it does take time and to be able to prepare stuff from scratch in a sense, which is a more sustainable way sometimes. But I also think sometimes the fads that have been picked up have been weird ones. Like the fact that straws were the scapegoat of plastic when maybe it's not straws, maybe it's like, I feel like that's the smallest thing you could pick on.
You gotta care about the turtles, man. It gets stuck in their noses.
Well, I'll say it. I hate no. No. I just think that's a weird thing to pick, and I think sometimes that's biased people who are like, well, the straws surely aren't that big of a deal, which I mean they are to a turtle if it gets stuck in there, but like that's not. There's so many other things that are bigger plastic pollutants than straws.
Yeah, I think the issue a lot of people picked with straws specifically is that they're so small and they weigh so little that it's way easy for them to get blown out of landfills and out of trash trucks and end up polluting other areas. So I understand why people were picking on straws specifically, but also here's me going like a little conspiracy mode. I think straws were a scapegoat, okay? In the same sort of way as you, but I think they were a scapegoat in the same way that fun fact, the idea of like a personal ecological footprint that everybody has a particular effect, like, oh, if everyone lived like you, you'd use 3 Earth's resources. That was created by oil companies to convince people that it was more of a personal responsibility than a corporate issue of pollution. I think the same kind of thing is happening with straws. So they're like, oh, look at the straws, look at how they're hurting the poor turtles, and don't look at how we are ruining water sources and polluting the ocean and polluting the land and creating so much waste.
Yeah, and you could look at, hey, instead of returning glass cans and glass bottles and paying for them, now we just produce plastic.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's cheaper and you make a better profit. But
it's cheaper for you, but it costs everyone so much more.
Yeah. And it's cheaper for everyone, which is part of the issue there.
Yeah.
Like maybe if you want like a concrete, here's what you do politically next week, it's like drink water out of your reusable water bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tiny thing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah. I see what, like, I think probably something we're going to differ on a little bit over the course of these shows is personal responsibility versus more societal responsibility.
Yeah.
have a feeling that we're going to have some differences there.
Oh, certainly.
And I look at it and say, consumers have to take their beliefs and turn them into action.
Sure.
Because consumers do drive what sells. Now, I also know enough about advertising that I know that companies can drive what sells a little bit too if they're good at it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a give and take there. But yeah, I certainly think things that encourage, even in simple ways, the adoption of greener energy is going to take off. Because, once one person in a neighborhood gets solar panels and is like, yo, I don't pay energy bills anymore.
Yeah.
Like, especially these days when energy bills they keep piling up.
There's some
I
places
forget what ours
where
is for the apartment, but
there's some places where the energy grid will pay you back for the energy if you make excess on the grid.
Yeah.
So
it's like,
I mean,
I'm like, that appeals to my sense of personal thriftiness.
Yeah.
It's like, I could go to a restaurant, drink out of a plastic straw with that money.
Okay.
And then recycle it properly.
Yeah.
Again, but okay, we're
yeah, we can try to get into this is one we did not discuss beforehand, but it's sort of going along the same line we were talking about with being able to afford to be sustainable, being able to afford to grow your own food, that kind of stuff. Wages. Personally, I'm of the opinion that workers need to be paid a lot more. They need to be paid a fair living wage because, as we have seen, wages have stagnated since the Reagan presidency while inflation continues to go up. And that's not good. That's bad, Chief. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, this is another one where I look at it and I say, some of it comes down to personal choice. And I think we're seeing that more. Through the pandemic, of course, a lot of people quit because they were able to. And then that forced companies to raise their starting wages quite a bit. Like, I mean, some jobs that people would consider like baseline, like starter high school jobs, like Wendy's right now is hiring for $12 an hour. So I do think that happens with market pressure. Like when you cannot get people to work for $7.25, even though some people are still willing to do it sometimes, then naturally the wage is going to go up. And I also think if you have a federal minimum wage, or the federal minimum wage is $7.25, correct?
Yes, Kentucky minimum wage is as well.
Yeah. If you probably a federal minimum wage is probably not going to conform well because, take for example, to live in Seattle, you need a whole lot more money than you do to live in Richmond, Kentucky. Or to live in LA, you need an absurd amount of money compared to Richmond, Kentucky,
Yeah.
So I don't think that should be a federal issue. I think that's certainly something where states should say, hey, it seems like people need a little more money to get by. Gradually, if that's the case, gradually raise the minimum wage. But I think that should be a state-by-state thing because I don't think federal cuts it for that.
See, I disagree with you on that one because I think I understand what you're saying with some people need more money as a base pay to survive in certain cities. So I think my take on it is that the government should base the minimum wage on those people in the like Seattle, LA areas. And I also don't think that the people in the Seattle and LA base areas should be paid a federal minimum wage that is lower than what they need to survive. My take would be I think that the federal government should raise the minimum wage to whatever it would take to survive in one of the lower income areas. So like think a place where property is really cheap, paying for food, paying for everything is really cheap. If they base the minimum wage on surviving in that area, being able to live like just safely and eat good food in that area and then make that the federal minimum wage, because local governments can pick their own they can pick their own,
like I think
they can choose to raise it. Like Ohio, it's $8.36 I think is the minimum wage.
Specific.
Yeah. It might be higher now. It might have raised, but I know
in the whole state.
Yes,
Okay.
but I know my local government, grow Grove City, Ohio. It's one of the suburbs under Columbus. Made the minimum wage for government, like the city employees, $12 an hour.
Yeah.
It went up to 10. It went up to $12 an hour the last year I worked for them. So I think local governments have that ability to fill that gap where they know people need more money to survive. But I think the federal minimum wage being as low as it is currently allows states and allows employers to get away with paying people a wage that's low enough that no one can survive on it.
There is certainly one part of the minimum wage that I know we're both going to agree on. I think the exception for where you can pay what, $2.25?
Yeah,
to
waiters.
At a job with waiters, that's absurd.
That's ridiculous.
And I mean, probably that would mean you raised your food prices and they got tipped less. So I don't know, maybe but I think it's like maybe just have them paid the same minimum at least.
Yeah.
Though it could be. I'm sure there's some waiters who would probably not support that because they'd be like, well, I actually get tipped a ridiculous amount. But then there's probably some that make that.
Like if you work in is it Michael's? Is that the big steakhouse? That might be a Columbus thing.
In like Lexington?
I might be thinking of a Columbus
Malone's.
Steakhouse. Malone's. Okay, so that's more of a local.
Yeah.
Malone's. If you work at Malone's as a waiter, you're probably bringing home like $400 a night. Yeah. Respect.
You working at Waffle House?
Exactly. If you work at a different restaurant that has the same pay scale, don't call a Waffle House as a Waffle Home. Respect the Waffle House.
I respect the Waffle House.
Okay, thank you.
That is my legitimately my favorite
I
restaurant.
love Waffle House. So I love Waffle House. It is everything to me. I used to go with some friends last year all the time.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Waffle House employees.
I go probably like every week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not quite religiously, but like kind of.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree because there are definitely restaurants who use that server minimum to get away with paying people dirt cheap, no money.
And now to some extent I do think those restaurants do tend to weed themselves out because eventually people realize that that's it, especially if it's a place where like tipping isn't encouraged or standard, which I think tipping is an odd thing, but that's not really a political thing. That's more of an interesting cultural thing. But I think those do tend to weed themselves out because eventually people are like, well, this is not the people that you'd want working at a restaurant aren't going to want to work at a restaurant. They're going to go work for a restaurant that pays them more pretty quickly, and turnover becomes a problem. And I think typically those restaurants do tend to weed themselves out.
Yeah, and I will kind of sidebar. I think we'd agree on tipping because European style tipping, it's not typical to tip because they pay their waiters enough and include the tip as part of the cost of the meal. Yeah. So that if you want to tip extra, that's just you being very nice, because the workers can survive without you paying for it. But like we're talking about the waiters, the servers who are paid $2.25 an hour.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, it's a dick move to not tip them because then they're not getting paid, but it's also a cost that you were not necessarily expecting when you went in. Kind of like how stores don't add tax onto the price of items. I don't like that either.
Yeah, there's an easy political thing. They should add tax on their items.
Yes.
I'll say it.
Put it all together.
It's like that's not even really, that's just weird. Like,
make the price clear.
Why would you make that a normal thing? Anyway, that's not really politics, I guess. Well, I guess it could be.
I don't know, just in general, taxes. I feel like they should tell us how much we owe and we shouldn't have to do the math ourselves.
Our education system wasn't good enough for that. Oh, it's also homeschooled. That's probably important.
No, I went to public school and I can't do math. So, I think one thing you touched on a little bit back in the conversation, kind of circling back around to costs of goods having to go up if wages go up. I think that's bullshit. Not that it doesn't happen, but that I think it should not happen. Because you see large franchises like McDonald's, if they raise their wages, they're like, oh, you're going to have to pay $6 for a cheeseburger. No other way around it. No other way that we can survive unless you're paying $6 for a cheeseburger. have corporate eat the cost. Those people are making millions of dollars a year. You can survive with one less million to pay your workers.
Yeah. That's, I mean, that is an interest, like, generally, 'cause I guess what we've seen throughout the pandemic is raised, but allegedly because of supply chain issues.
Yeah.
Which it usually hasn't been pointed to as, we need to pay people more, so we're charging you more. I would imagine probably it factors in.
That's a lot of the argument against the raise of wages, is that people are like, if we raise wages, the cost of your goods is going to have to go up. No, it doesn't.
It would after a point. I mean, that's not a frequently. Now, not necessarily McDonald's. A lot of part of it is I look at it and I say, well, you raise wages, yeah, but it affects, say, a local restaurant more firmly than it affects someone like McDonald's.
Oh, yeah,
can
definitely.
Eat that. You know, that I guess theoretically can, and that people are literally addicted to.
Yeah.
But
I suppose my thing is that if you can't afford to pay your workers fair wages, something's going to have to give. Like, you're going to have to figure it out, or I think maybe you shouldn't keep your business open if you can't pay your workers fairly.
I also think generally, though, people try to pay, I mean, they try to pay less than they have to, but they will, as a good business person is going to say, this is what this work is worth. And I don't think it's certainly not the federal government's place to say, we're going to say exactly how much this person's hourly work is worth to you as a business. Because I think frequently it gets lost that, like, it's not saying that person's life, it's saying an hour of this person's work, how much is that worth? I think it's easy to get caught up in the emotional argument, which is nobody is only worth $7.25 an hour. It's like, yeah, but some of my work might be. Some of my work might be enough that it's not worth that much.
I know where you're going with this, but I'd say I disagree because I think I'm looking at it differently. I'm not thinking about the value of the work of, say, cashing people out at a gas station or flipping a burger as being the value. I'm looking at the time as being the value.
Yeah.
So that person, with the time that they spent working at your shop, could be doing another job, or they could be out enjoying life. They could be hiking. Yeah. They could be growing their own food. They could be hanging out with their family. So I think how I look at the worth of work is, what is this person's time worth? And I don't think anybody's time is worth as little as $7.25. Getting back to what you were saying, I think people's time is worth more because there's worthwhile things that people can be doing outside of that work. So if you're going to pay someone to work, if someone has to come in and work for you to earn the money that they need to survive, I think you should adequately pay for their time.
I think there's something to, like, I see where you're coming from there, but I do think I'm going to disagree on that because a business, like, the business isn't responsible for that person so much as they're responsible that they are adequately compensating them for the labor that they do for the company. That's how I see it. And yeah, certainly there's a lot of jobs. Like, I think that, for example, a waiter definitely is doing more than $2.25 worth of work.
Oh, yeah.
At almost any restaurant.
Yeah.
In almost any given hour. Way more.
Anyone who works with, like public
you could
service.
You could serve one table, you're doing more than $2.25 an hour.
Yeah.
But so there is something we said for raising that way. I just don't see it as you compensate them for their time. Like, it's not, like, that's not usually what a business is paying for, and they shouldn't have to pay for the potential value of that person's time if they weren't working for the company.
I think it should certainly factor in. I get where you're coming from, but I think it should factor in because, like, that person could be creating a work of art that is worth $100,000 in an hour. Say, I don't think they should be paid $100,000 for an hour, but they should be paid more than $7.25 because there's more value they could be providing to society. And I also think that factored into it should be the value that they are providing for society
Certainly for that company.
in the work. And for the company,
Yeah.
but also for society, because think about if there was nobody in America making food. That'd suck pretty bad.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty awful.
Yeah.
So I think you need to pay workers enough to make it worth their time and effort and, help them survive also because living is important. Worth their time and effort to provide that labor so that we all can enjoy that service.
But I don't think that's. I think that's kind of taking the actual emphasis off of what's actually going on, which is that they're doing the work that provides a certain service to someone. It's not, and I don't think it's like society's job, or certainly not the government's job, which I guess would be getting back. It's not the government's job to ensure that all those things happen. I guess part of the government has a very simple, especially the federal government, has a very simple and short list of responsibilities. And basically it involves don't let it all go crazy, right? Don't let us get taken over. Don't let, stuff like that. And I don't see ensuring that there's enough restaurant workers as always part of that. Like that is something I see in this country, at least, as away from the federal towards the states, which is still politics. And I do think the market's gonna sort itself out frequently in certain situations.
I don't know. I think the current market that we're in is a little complicated because you have a lot of businesses saying that that nobody wants to work, nobody wants to come into work, nobody wants to do any work. They're just not coming in, and it's because we don't pay them enough, but we can't raise our wages, so they're not coming to work. But if you look at surveys of people who are job hunting right now, 19 out of 20, no, it was 15 out of 20 was the statistic. 15 out of 20 jobs they applied for, they got no response from the employer.
Yeah.
I know over the summer, I applied for 7 or 8 different jobs, a bunch of different internships. I heard back from one.
Yeah.
Exactly one. So I think it's a more complicated issue than just being what it is right now.
And I think that people don't want to work is frequently, some people don't want to work, which is something that I think sometimes gets forgotten. But also, certain people don't want to work certain jobs, and that's understandable.
Yeah.
And maybe some of it comes down to people may have to work jobs they don't want to work to make the money they want to make. And I'm okay with that having to happen. I've worked,
I'm with you to an extent. I think that people should be able to work at a job that they're good at. People don't necessarily need to enjoy their work. It's labor, it is what it is. As long as you're being fairly compensated for it, But and a lot of people, the thing is, I think a lot of people enjoy doing their work when it's something that they're good at. So whatever that thing is, I think people should be able to make a living wage working at what they're good at, even if they don't like it. Like, I don't think the most potential is being served or it's meeting. I don't think it would be right necessarily for someone who's really, really good at, say, like cosmetology. They're like insanely talented at doing hair. I don't think that it's good per se if they have to work a job in finance to survive when that's not what they enjoy and it's not what they're good at.
But if there were a ton of people who are really, really, really good cosmetologists, which there might be, I'm not really up to date on cosmetology, then it might be necessary. And I don't think it's necessarily good. Like, I wouldn't want to work a job that I didn't like.
Yeah.
And I certainly wouldn't want to do it for very long. But sometimes it might be necessary. And I just think that's, like, sometimes you have to take it and make the best of it as a person and say, well, I'll have to do a job that isn't necessarily what I love or what even I'm amazing at, but a job that I can do and that people are willing to pay me for to get the money that I need.
I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways to be good at something. Like, you don't think of people who work in office jobs necessarily as being really good at doing cubicle work. But maybe they're really good at the tasks that they're assigned, like the spreadsheets, the communication, the teamwork aspect of that. So maybe they don't like working in a cubicle and they don't like their job, but what they're really good at is doing that task. And what they know they can succeed in is that. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
And I don't think that, because we're kind of wrapping around a bit to the people should have to work in jobs that don't really suit them because people need to work in those jobs.
I would say it's not because of that. I would say it's because they need to live and to have the standard of life they want for themselves. They may have to do something they really would rather not do, and maybe even something they're not the best at because someone's willing to pay them to do it.
See, I don't know. That's my thing. I think every job someone should be able to live and survive in. If they're working a job, they should be able to live and survive working that job. That's my take on it. I don't think it really helps or makes things better if we put someone that we know is going to be bad at a job
I don't think
in a different job just because they need more money to survive on. Like, if you have someone who's like, this is kind of a really basic example, but if you have someone who's really good at working grill but they're really bad at managing people, I don't think they should have to take a manager position where they're no longer working grill and they're doing things that they're not good at just to be able to live. I think they should be able to live off of something that, like, they're really good at, and if you're really good at something, I want you to be able to do the thing you're really good at, rather than doing something you're bad at because you want to be alive.
But I also look at it as, I don't put people in positions, right?
I don't
and
either.
People shouldn't. Like, people in it, hopefully, one should be able to choose to some extent where they can work.
Yeah.
And they'll have to make that personal and individual choice that may not be a great one for them. They may be choosing between horrible pay and a thing they're good at, and great pay, a thing that they don't really want to do. But that is their choice, and ultimately I think they're going to make those choices. And sometimes, like right now, it certainly is a time where, like, the market is weird. It's just weird.
Funky.
Right now. Yeah. It's being weird. Gas prices were like $2 a bunch of years, like what, 4 years ago? 3 years ago?
Yeah, they were below $2 for a while there.
And now they're not that.
Yeah.
So like I do think right now is kind of a weird time to look at it and be like, what does this mean? Like, I think, I don't know, but
it's a very it's kind of an odd time to get into that conversation because we're kind of dipping into the philosophy of it because it's not something that's really working at the moment.
Like right now seems like pumping money in has done some weird stuff, and a bunch of other things have done some weird stuff. So it's like
everything's funky.
Yeah. Right now, the last 2 years would be a bad time to take a snapshot of the economy and be like, let's form our economic philosophy and political philosophy off of this.
Off of just
because we had
just that.
I won't get to Trump, but we had a reality TV star as our president for 4 years. Like, it's been weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway. Did we cover anything else, or what time we got? How we doing, Ryan?
We're at 39:15.
Oh, we should probably wrap it up.
We can go real quick.
Okay.
Thoughts on marijuana?
Oh, yeah. No.
End with a fun one.
You go first.
Okay. I think that marijuana should be decriminalized. I'm all for the medical use of marijuana, and honestly, I'm not personally into using marijuana recreationally, but it's just not my thing. But I'm not the one to stop anyone from doing it. I don't really care.
Yeah.
It's not my business. I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay? I feel like marijuana is not harming people as much as other substances that we currently have legalized, like alcohol.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Like maybe if we're gonna keep marijuana illegal, it's like maybe we shouldn't have gotten rid of prohibition.
I mean,
Yeah, I certainly like. Again, I'm sort of. It's not my thing. I won't smoke weed ever probably, but like maybe it's not worth throwing people in jail over.
yeah, oh, absolutely not.
And if we're gonna decriminalize it, it doesn't make sense to me to decriminalize something if you're not gonna just take the laws off the book, making it illegal. Because the whole decriminalization thing. I look at it and I say, if you're gonna take away the consequences for breaking the law, you're just kind of undermining your country if you're not gonna just take away the law.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
You you repeal the laws and make it illegal.
Yeah.
And that's part of the process of decriminalization.
Yeah.
But
I do have a lot of misgiving. I just don't think it's a great thing at all. But I'm not sure if it's the sort of thing that certainly should be illegal at the federal level.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't use it, but I got no issues with marijuana. Like, go off, It's not my thing, but whatever. But I just, like, you kind of touched on it, but it's the criminalization specifically of marijuana has created a lot of larger issues with prison overpopulation, the conditions in prisons, the conditions in some communities, especially in urban areas. And I just think that it's not that big of a deal. It's not something that I think we should be causing all of this suffering over. It's just weed,
Yeah. Like, I do think it's probably less healthy than people make it out to be. It probably has more side effects than people make it out to have. But
I mean, so does every drug,
So does alcohol, for
Yeah.
example. And I would look at it and say, if you compare it to, say, opioids, frequently legal, frequently prescribed for lots of money by pharmaceutical companies, I don't see how marijuana is more dangerous than that.
Yeah.
So, and if it can, heck, replace that to some extent, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. And I think
So I think definitely medical makes sense. Like, I'm like, it makes sense to legalize it medically. I don't know if it makes sense to legalize it recreationally. I don't think people need another reason to be crazy, certainly these days. But,
I mean, anything in excess is bad. Too much alcohol, bad. Too much caffeine is bad. Looking at you specifically. Clearly, obviously, too much weed is also bad, but I don't think it's...
But that can be a personal choice.
Yeah, it's a personal thing, and I don't think it's something that we really need to be, like, so pressed over.
And certainly the thing that would worry me most about it is already illegal. Like, you can't, with alcohol, you can't drive intoxicated.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be operating things under the influence. Yeah. And that's already, that's the thing where I'm like, that affects other people. That's a state thing. And I should probably look into it, whether people driving intoxicated went up in, say, Washington State or Colorado, because that would probably be the one where you'd be like, oh, that's concerning.
Yeah. I'm not sure, but it's also marijuana's already under the DUI laws, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have the same education towards not driving drunk as you do, well, not driving high as you do not driving drunk. I mean, you can only do so much. People are already driving high. And driving drunk.
Don't do that, people.
Don't do that.
There's our advice.
That's bad.
We can agree on that. Don't
That's
drive
something
drunk.
we agree on. Don't drive drunk or high. But I don't know. I would expect maybe there's an increase in it, but maybe it's just the same. Because the people who are going to drive high, I think, are already driving high.
Which isn't great, but yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't be that person. Okay. Well, our next episode is what, 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, our next episode will be 2 weeks from now. Not sure what we're going to talk about. We'll take a look at the news, get some interesting headlines, get some interesting topics.
More current than this. This one was more...
This is a bit of an introduction.
Themes. We'll probably have some specific news stuff that we kind of drill down into.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for listening. This has been Wilson v. Wilson with Jess Wilson and...
Peter Wilson.
See you next time.